should be good.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you guys all so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. Today I'm going to be talking about anxiety, which I know a lot of us are pretty well versed on, and it's something that I'm sure a lot of schools and friends and family all talk about. But there's a lot of things that I find that aren't discussed, or different coping mechanisms or ways to deal with it that aren't as popularized in education of it. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. So, textbook definition of anxiety, which is I'm sure we're all familiar with. The first definition: a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. This is something I think everyone generally has or deals with. But the second definition is sometimes the other case: a mental condition characterized by excessive apprehensiveness about real or perceived threats, typically leading to avoidant behaviors and often physical symptoms such as increased heart rate and muscle tension. Everyone experiences anxiety differently, whatever definition fits you. And I think the textbook definition, it doesn't encapsulate all of it, but it's very much a scale. And even though that we say people have anxiety disorders, it's something that we all collectively deal with. It's just how and where and when we deal with it that's different for all of us. Over a third of teenagers are diagnosed with anxiety disorder a year, and even more just experience it generally. I know a big one, like all of my friends at school say that they're super anxious about finals or a test or their grades. It's a massive part of what motivates them and what a lot of them do. So sometimes anxiety can be helpful, but a lot of the times it impacts us negatively. What makes anxiety a lot scarier is that it clings on to things that you find important, which is something that I thought was kind of interesting when I was learning about it myself. So whether that's friends, health, family, anything, grades, whatever impacts you, maybe it's something that someone's telling you to be anxious about, or something that you care about that manifests into something even bigger that shouldn't matter as much, but your brain makes it a huge deal in order to protect itself. But a lot of the time it is very unhelpful. So something I've learned when dealing with my own personal anxiety, and something I see sometimes in other people, is well-worn paths. The unofficial definition I've given it: the topics or place your brain will constantly return to when it comes to anxiety. So even if you have absolutely nothing to be concerned about, your life is great, everything's good, your brain sometimes has topics that it will return to, or specific, genres of things that it will return to consume space in your brain. So whether that's, like I said, people worry about all different things: friends, family, health. I know a big one for me is friends. I'm always concerned about my relationships and making sure that I'm doing a good job. But what is an example of it? So let's just say you were gonna have a party with your friends. You're all hanging out, you're all having a good time, but you make one joke about one friend and they don't laugh at it, but everyone else does. Even though they didn't laugh, you still talk to them throughout the rest of the party. You're all having a good time and everything's great. You go home, you have dinner, you go to bed, but all you can think about that entire time is that one specific interaction. Even though they didn't seem to mind or care, that's all you can think about. It's constantly occupying your mind. You feel guilty. You're worrying that this relationship with them is going to end because of one thing you said, and you're catastrophizing the situation. When you go to school the next day, nothing happens. You're talking like normal. Everything's fine. And it's kind of this vicious cycle that repeats. Any minor interaction that you have with this person, you're super concerned. They're going to cut me off. They hate me. All this stuff, but it's a super vicious cycle, and this can go on for weeks or months just for one specific topic. But that's kind of an example of a well-worn path, or I think one that I tend to feel a lot of the time too. So well-worn paths are a big one in characterizing your anxiety. In this situation, you can put your anxiety in a box if you're able to say, okay, I'm feeling this feeling about this specific situation. Going back to the front example over and over again. I'm constantly feeling this sense of worry surrounding my relationships with my friends and that relationship. So if you can say, well, if I'm constantly feeling this, or I'm feeling this at a specific time, or doing this in a specific way, and you can find those patterns in it, it makes it a lot easier to say, I am feeling anxiety. I am having an anxious thought. So instead of worrying about it, you can say, I'm pretty sure I am having an anxious reaction right now, rather than catastrophizing the situation, which makes it so much worse. Another way, I thought it was total crap to begin with, but journaling. Journaling has genuinely helped me recognize patterns a lot more, especially if I'm feeling like I have no control, or I feel like it's out of my reach and it feels like this gigantic monster of a thing. Being able to recognize patterns in what you're worrying about, when you're worrying about it, and what sparked it can help you recognize it in the future. So going back to the friend example again, if I'm worried about my friends and I'm able to write it down that this one specific example is happening at a specific time, maybe I know I get really anxious at night, right before I'm going to bed when my mind is trying to clear. That's a big indicator. I can say, okay, if I'm feeling anxious right now, if it's truly something that I'm worried about, then I can take it with me into the morning rather than letting it keep me up at night. But just being able to characterize it in different ways can help you find your way in saying, okay, I'm having anxiety right now, rather than seeing it as a real thing. One more thing about characterizing your anxiety, this one is definitely the scariest, but reaching out, talking to someone, saying, this is what I'm worried about. Even if they don't entirely understand, I think if I talk to my friend or a family member or someone that I trust about what I'm being concerned about, and their first reaction is like, why are you, what? That's so crazy. Like, why would you be thinking about that? Though it may seem a little harsh, that's kind of an indicator that you're feeling anxious thoughts because your brain is coming up with these crazy improbable outcomes. So a big one is school and grades and all that stuff. Whether it's your pressure on yourself or pressures from other people, school is definitely a big one because it weighs so heavily on our lives, especially in a super academic school, AP classes, whatever it may be. I find that usually I'll freak out about stuff, but even after I'm able to calm down, I still have a huge mountain of work to do. So a few things that you can do if you are feeling super anxious, you have a huge list, you've procrastinated, I know that's a big one for me, being able to take it in steps. I think a lot of the time we are able to see it as a whole, be able to see an entire list of this gigantic mountain of work that we have to do, and it freaks me out. I know I've read it freaks my friends out a lot, just being able to see just like the sheer amount of stuff. I like to say numbers help me a lot to be able to calm down and say, okay, the maximum amount of time I can put into this. If I have a project that I have due the next day, I'm like, okay, this is probably gonna take me like 4 hours to finish at the max. And I do the max for all the hours of all the things I need to do, and I add it up, and then I'm able to divvy up my time, whether it's at lunch or different classes or wherever I'm able to complete it before it's actually due. So I know for me, numbers tend to be able to let me calm down and be like, okay, I can assign times and places to be able to complete these things. But and also writing it all down tends to make it feel a lot less grand. I know for finals, I had a huge mountain to study for, and I had all these classes and all this time, but being able to say, okay, I have science to study for, and I have Latin to study for, and I have math to study for, that makes it feel a lot less big. Just being able to see it on paper that you only have like 3 bullet points to do. Just being able to visualize it rather than having it cooped up in your mind definitely helps me a lot. Anxiety is different for everyone. It manifests like I said, it manifests different for everyone. Everyone tends to care and feel it linger in different places, but everyone feels it. The way I experience anxiety is not the way that you experience anxiety. The way the person sitting next to you experiences anxiety is not the way you experience anxiety. Everyone's is different, but generally we can all feel the basis of it. And there's so many people out there that experience it too. And though it feels embarrassing or crazy or weird a lot of the time, I promise you there is at least one other person that you know or have walked by in the hallway that's experiencing the same thing. Reaching out does not make you weak. Talking to someone does not make you weak. It's insanely scary to begin with to be able to say, I need help. I need to figure out how to manage this, but it doesn't make you weak or pathetic or whatever you're telling yourself it may be. Talking to people is unbelievably strong and it can help you in so many ways. Yeah, that's it.